Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Catalyst Weekend Astrology Report. It's a pretty big weekend, and I usually do a report for the weekend just to give ourselves some information to go into the weekend. I take the actual weekend off from my work, and I understand that not everybody does. For a long time, I did not take the traditional weekend off as my weekend, being in the service industry for so many years. But how is everyone? Welcome back. I really appreciate you being here. A couple of announcements. So if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Welcome. I hope you enjoy the content and you find something useful and inspiring, and something to guide you along your way. Astrology is really very simple. It's not simple. It's simple. It's not easy. It's a language you must immerse yourself in that is mathematic and abstract, symbolic at the same time. But what it does is provide a very firm and very substantial fixed points in time that we can do our best to align with rather than to be blind to or be in resistance to. So if you find value in this, of course, you can really help this channel by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. And a special hello to my subscribers on Subscribestar. I actually have an announcement about that. I already put it up on Telegram. But the thing about Subscribestar is that you have to have 5 active subscribers in order to initiate or activate the auto draft of the monthly installment. I know it's I remember when I had no subscribers to any of these platforms. So I know that it's small, but I'm reaching out right now for those of you that have been subscribed and you thought that you were still subscribed, to please go back and check and subscribe again for the month. If you're new, if you're considering subscribing and supporting Catalyst Energies for $3 a month, you're going to have access to the weekly Starseed meetups that are going to be starting very soon. And maybe we can push it over the tipping point in terms of active subscribers and get the auto draft initiated, because I think that is something that people actually want. And I understand why they don't activate it, because they are trying to, I guess, have some sort of mechanism in place to combat fraud. But in this case, it's like, yeah, let's get over the tipping point, guys, so then you don't have to worry about it, and you can just support me supporting you in this work as we support each other. So enough of the announcements. Let's get into today's content, okay? So I'm going to get out of studio mode here. So how is everyone feeling? Wow, I usually don't do an intuitive portion of the report when I do the astrology reports, like the longer term ones, the weekend, the weeklies, when I do the forecasts or any kind of special report that's seasonal or looks at a particular chunk of time. I don't often do the intuitive portion, and I leave that for the dailies, but I really wish I had, because it feels just like, wow, there's that part of me that's like, I could really use the extra layer of synchronicity and symbolic guidance here to kind of make sense of what I am feeling. So I'm curious how people are feeling, because I know for me, it's like, it's still this agitation and this kind of active processing period, but at the same time, especially because the moon will be moving into her home sign of Cancer today, and the feels are going to get even more intense and more sensitive, and we may find ourselves sinking even deeper, or allowing ourselves emotionally and intuitively to kind of disperse into a stillness, if we have a core stabilization that holds us in some way. And you remember the last month we had a full moon in Cancer at about 28 degrees Cancer. And we're going to have, and it made this mystic rectangle. We're going to see that again leading into Monday. But there will be no sun involved this time to illuminate this internalized, intuitive, aspect. The moon represents a lot of how we feel about the world around us, how we feel and adapt, and tap into what's going on outside of our own logic or even the material world, but tap into it. So, but we won't have the sun to illuminate whatever that 28 degrees Cancer is. It'll just be Pluto this time. So we'll get into that as well. We can feel some sort of buildup, and it's not exactly, it doesn't feel that great. Now, everybody's going to have a different experience of what's going on depending on what work they're doing and where they are in their life. I know for me, I haven't felt right since I got sick about a week ago. And, some people had reported that there was a depression type of phase. And I know both my partner and I are kind of going through similar types of feelings right now. And, with Mercury meeting Pluto today as well, at the point of the natal Pluto of the United States, we're gonna look at this imagery here and what it really means to be busting out of or losing the outer shell of the aviary of our social political order or our society. We're gonna look at what that may actually feel like you can intellectualize these experiences all day. It's quite another to live through them. And, there's deep analysis that comes with Mercury meeting Pluto like this, especially in the position that they are meeting. And the fact that this is the third time now because Mercury is moving direct. It's already passed Pluto twice in its retrograde period. And Mercury is still in its post-retrograde shadow. What does that mean? It means that it hasn't left the territory of its entire retrograde cycle quite yet. That'll be on the 24th, and then it'll be in Aquarius, and Mercury will be able to crunch the numbers, so to speak, and mentally play with these much more the concepts of civilization and the human collective in general, and be in new mental territory. But still, we're still kind of going through all of the retrograde time, and this is not going to be a new experience, but every time Mercury and Pluto meet, there's the possibility of very deep and powerful analysis, but there's also the potential to be very much manipulated in some way, not necessarily emotionally, but through the actual nervous system signals, through actual data points, right? Through communication, through appeasing or making any kind of connection to your mental realm and the way that it functions. So Pluto is about power. It's about power because it's the realm of Scorpio where we give ourselves over to something bigger than us. That power is generated. 8th house is where power and resources are generated. And so this is, and Pluto represents the ultimate power when we give ourselves over to something more than us, and what that can do and what it can do not just for us, but for everybody involved. And so, but it still has a lot to do with power. So there can be an overpowering of the mind here, depending on how Pluto is placed in the chart in reference to your chart and what else is going on. There could be a hypnosis, right? Like a manipulative power right to the mind. But it also allows for penetrating mental analysis, especially in where they're positioned, especially when it comes to the dome, right? The dome around our reality that we call the matrix, what we call our governments, our institutions, the economy, all of the Capricornian aspects, right? The 10th house, the zenith of the astrological wheel, right? Everything that we're here to do physically, materially, reaches its pinnacle at Capricorn in the 10th house. And so now the power of transformation comes in the letting go and the destruction of even those structures, right? Everything goes back. Everything goes back. And it's not exactly an easy analysis. It's not comfortable to have that level of analysis. There was a lot of sadness in my dreamscape, a lot of tears, a lot of losing people. So, and this has been an ongoing experience, but there's something, and especially because Mercury is still in its retrograde shadow, the realm of our own minds and what we're focused on, how we're processing it, what types of data are we processing, what are we thinking about, right? And of course, in Capricorn, our thoughts are being drawn more towards the responsibility to the entire group and what it takes to solve problems and to organize and to capitalize on group energy. But we know that this country, the United States, for instance, when you look at Pluto in the natal chart will show you the default setting of the power of transformation. Like, we are in a transformation period at a social, institutional level right now, and we're about to have a very strong mentally clear and mentally focused experience of that once and for all, right? We've already kind of danced around this issue, but now where Pluto is, where Mercury is meeting it, is like, yep, here it is. This is what it means to lose the security of the dome, just like the Truman Show, right? And that's the image for today's report. So I'm going to check in with the stream here and see what's going on, how people are doing. Perfect timing. I just got home from the store and was afraid I'd miss something. I was wondering, see, sometimes when I'm not consistent, it allows for people to pop in at a time that actually is more convenient for them, as opposed to staying very consistent. This is why I'm considering doing the starseed meetups on the lunar cycle as opposed to a fixed day. But I'm wondering what you guys think about that. I'm still feeling like I'm in a place that there are no words for. Yeah, I definitely am feeling that too. I'm in a good place and balance, but I just struggle to describe where I am. I think it's uncharted territory for me. And I think it's uncharted territory for many of us, many of us. It's no person at this point is having a Pluto return, but our nation is having a Pluto return. And, whether you like it or not, there's a lot that, impacts the world that based on what the United States is going through. So we're about to go through, we are currently. And so, of course, that's a ripple effect, and it impacts all of us in different ways. Yeah, I think it's important that we are in a good place and balanced. If we acknowledge that about ourselves, that's a good place to be, to keep our minds a sacred space, right? To allow for the moon in Cancer right now, especially leading up to this Pleiadian mystic rectangle, we got a glimpse of it in the full moon period last month. And so it comes around again in an opposition to Pluto, as we're going to see. There's where the emotional manipulation can really happen, but also, again, very powerful intuitive feelings that we have the opportunity to expand upon with Pluto and the moon. Anyway, yeah, I agree. Pumped up about the starseed meetups. That seems like perfect timing. I totally agree with that too. I think it's, I'm trying. I mean, not even trying. I just am, right? I am living in accordance to what feels like the flow of things, instead of pushing myself to be in a particular position, to be offering a certain thing, to like get myself caught up in the loop. Because the thing is, like, the whole structure is coming down, so it doesn't really make any sense to put all of your eggs in a basket that ultimately is slotted for destruction at a cosmic level. To remain grounded with an open heart chakra, that is my daily focus lately. Well, and that's a very Pleiadian thing to do. So, and we are in the Pleiadian revival time, and as well as I do, Emily, that, in terms of the Pleiadian relevance to you personally. So, I mean, that is what we're here to learn how to do right now, and what we're getting so much support to do is the open heart chakra, right? This is where it all emanates from, right? It all emanates from there, and anything less than that is not going to tolerate our presence. So, I mean, you just shine as bright as you can, and it's just like, repels everything that cannot tolerate that level of open heart chakra. So it's kind of like a secret weapon in some ways. I don't like to think about it as a weapon, but you know what I mean. So I am going to bring over the charts now. We're just going to go into the weekend's astrology. So the big one is the Super Bowl. So I had a hypothesis that I tested, and it was wrong. And that's the measure of an actual hypothesis. a lot of people say a lot of stupid shit, and they pass their opinions off as if they're fact. And there is a reason that true scientific literacy is simultaneously destroyed in our public education and critical analysis, but also too at the very same time is propped up on some sort of pedestal as like the highest form of civilization. It's a mind fuck, right? Everything is a mind fuck, but that in itself is a mind fuck. You get people that don't even understand the scientific method and couldn't tell you the difference between a factual statement and an opinion, but they're going to say to trust you know what I mean? Trust the science. They've turned it into a religion. Oh, I could go on. So I won't. I won't. Although I do enjoy releasing that energy from time to time. But what I am trying to say here is oh geez, it's gone now because I got into this rant about science and critical analysis and hypotheses. A hypothesis, an actual hypothesis that is part of the scientific method, has to be falsified. If you present a hypothesis that you can't falsify with evidence, then it's not a hypothesis, and then or a hypothesis, and it's just your opinion, right? I mean, my God, they've really just skewered the true nature of the scientific method in the name of science. It's unbelievable. Anyway, my hypothesis was false, right? I said, if you look at this timing of the Super Bowl every year, I bet you that there's a moon, and the moon is in Cancer near Sirius, and they do some sort of, because we all know the halftime show is a ritual. So, a huge ritual. But I looked it up, and that's not true. It's based on when the playoffs are, and then so many weeks after the playoffs and stuff like that. So I'm sure that there's something a little bit more, but if you looked at the moon every year, the moon is in a different position, right? There's no consistency that I can find in terms of that. Now, it may have something to do when the season starts, and perhaps there's so much more there to look at. I'm mildly interested. It's not something I'm going to spend a ton of time unpacking, but I did prove my hypothesis false, which is exactly what you want to be doing with the scientific method. You want to falsify your hypotheses, because if that's the case, that is what science is. And if you can't, then that starts to build on something that becomes a theory, right? And a theory eventually becomes a law, like the law of gravity or the law of thermodynamics, where there is absolutely no data to test that will show the contrary, right? And that's changing too. So anyway, I'll get off my science soapbox now, and we'll just start talking about astrology, which, in my opinion and estimation, is the merging of science and art. And this is why I practice it, because helps your two hemispheres of your brain actually talk to each other, very much like walking does. So anybody that says that astrology isn't based in something mathematic or scientific just doesn't know what they're talking about. So, all right, my friends. I'm looking into adopting a crystal skull now. Not sure if it's Pleiadian or Sirian, but wanting to earth more. That's interesting. My last teacher, who was really my handler, I've told this story to many people, not many, but I've told this story to a lot of people one-on-one in terms of my clients. My last teacher, who was really my handler, he had a crystal skull that he called Scully, and it was an interesting, the particular attachment, spirit, the non-physical entity that was being channeled through that crystal skull was was a rapscallion for sure. He was definitely a trickster, and I didn't really trust him at all, but we had an okay relationship, but I can see why he ended up with my teacher / handler, because I mean, anyway, that's a story for another time. It's just about crystal skulls. Okay, guys, so let's just start talking about astrology, shall we? All right, so we're looking at today, which is the 11th. Now, the moon is still in Gemini, so this feeling of just like maybe there is just an overwhelm. Maybe we are having our electronic signal system, our nervous system, maybe it's still being impacted right now by the moon, for instance. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what the moon was for a long time, and I'm not entirely convinced that it wasn't released at some point recently, but either way you look at it, whether there is some sort of control mechanism from the moon, or the moon itself is as a body that is in proximity to this planet and has a gravitational connection to it, it's still influencing the way that we adapt to the world around us. And so with Gemini, it's just, there's so much data, and it just feels like there's just so much coming in. There's so much swirling around in, and to feel it and to intuit. I found it to be very agitating the last couple of days. So I'm looking forward to the moon coming into Cancer, right? Again, it'll be his opportunity to really kind of just like let it go, disperse that intuitive energy, and just let it be still and be held in and stabilized, right? Finding our root system and allowing ourselves to, bask in that just a little bit and feel some safety, emotional safety, and some security here. I'm looking forward to that. So in the meantime, the first things that are happening here, this was overnight. So again, you having Neptune and Pisces involved, and then you have the moon involved. This is really speaking to a lot of people's dream states, I would imagine, especially because it was like, look at this, 1:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So late last night, early this morning, in the middle of the night, you have the moon in Gemini, right? This is Orion starseed territory, by the way, squaring Neptune and Pisces. Also, this is two right here. This is Lyra. This is Lyran starseed marking, and it's an Orion starseed marking at the same time. One is very resonant, and one is a huge challenge. As you can imagine, Pisces being naturally square to Gemini, and the idea of being one with everything, and to completely lose sight of all of the individual boundaries that separate you from God is, the Pisces realm. And the Orions, that's not, regardless if they're reptilian or the Vulcan. A great way to think about the Orion stars, the Orion beings, is to think about, if you're into Star Trek at all and you understand, how some of these other galactic races, what they represent. So the Vulcans are a race that at one point the Vulcans and the Romulans had been the same race, and there was a faction of people in Vulcans that decided that logic was going to be their primary way of getting interfacing with reality, and they worked to suppress and control their emotional self. Well, the Romulans were the complete opposite and allowed that part of themselves to grow and to take over. And those are more of like the reptilian Orions, right? The Romulans in some way. Whereas the logical Vulcans, who can mind meld and who have, are completely they're not shut down from their emotions. It is not the primary sense in which they investigate and interact with the world. It's very logical, but they have a lot of knowledge, and their problem solving skills are just off the charts, and they can stay level when they need to in a crisis, rather than to be emotionally manipulated, for instance. Or the Romulans allow their emotions to bring them into battle and war all the time. So that's one way to think about the Orions. Either way, you can, right there just seems like this battle here within ourselves of acknowledging the duality, wanting a way to get them to dance together, to find some organic wholeness, to enjoy the process. And again, squaring to Neptune and Pisces is just like, there's no difference between you and your dancing partner. There is no barn, right? Just like in the Matrix, there is no spoon. Right? And it's the same thing. There is no barn dance. There's no me and you. There's no dancing partner to even find it is all one and the same. And in fact, we are taking that peak experience of what that it feels like and attempting to integrate it into our daily life. And while we're trying to do that, or attempting to do that, or making the intention to do that, at least within ourselves, trying to find some sort of emotional balance within ourselves. Neptune in its, infinite wisdom, or if you want to call it that, or just in its completely dissolving function as a solvent, is just like, no, like there is no separation. And in fact, this is really where you find your true power, right? Your true fearlessness is to acknowledge this and find a way to incorporate that into the daily life through some set of principles or actions or guidelines, a mandate, for instance. Oh, interesting word. But we're still living individually. We're still in this stage of the consciousness, finding its medium of growth, of starting to rise up towards the sun, just like in Gemini, when the stem comes poking out of the soil for the first time and is reaching for the sun, and then coming into Cancer over the weekend. This is about how we feel as individuals, our own self-esteem, our own emotional security. So much of the moon transits is bumping up in different ways against so much more energy that is, for the most part, situated on the collective good, either in Aquarius or Capricorn, and even in Pisces, right? This has to do with, the whole and the different ways that we encounter the whole, what it represents, and how it feels to us. So, and it's not good or bad. It is what it is, right? And it's these squares where, when we confront those aspects of ourselves, that we get to learn and grow and develop. And it is a mutable square, right? Pisces and Gemini are mutable energies. They're changeable, they're shiftable, they're flexible, they're malleable, right? It's not fixed, or it doesn't even have a lot of momentum. It's malleable. And so there is, even that was, an opportunity to really shift, or to just accept the challenge here of this square. So as we move on into today, of course, you also are going to see that the moon comes into a trine with the sun in Aquarius. And so we definitely want to pay attention to the moon and the sun's interactions throughout the lunar cycle, because it makes all kinds of different angles with it throughout the whole time. And we are building up to a full moon next Wednesday. So here is this is an air trine. So you have Gemini and Aquarius. So these two luminaries that represent the two aspects within ourselves of the light and the dark, and the feeling and the expression, right? The masculine and feminine. These two coming together and stabilizing each other in some sort of mental or cognitive way has really a lot to do with not only disciplining our own energy, and disciplining our own energy in terms of our expression and our authenticity with the sun, but also too, the other side of that is to find some sort of creative integration within ourself, or within our emotional capacity with the moon at this moment. But it still has a lot to do with the function of the mind, and the function of ideas and concepts, and the mental energy. So these two, this is overnight, right? So this is really playing itself out. 3:33, that's great. Playing itself out in our subconscious when we're sleeping. And I do a lot of work, and so in my sleep, that's what I'm trying to say. I do a lot of work in my sleep. A lot of it happens there, because it's when you can shut down fully your conscious mind that you have access to these images and notions and structures and astral planes that you can't get to when you're in your meat suit, But this allowed for some sort of mental stabilization within ourselves that has, it's the ability to find that creative integration. It's not it's not either or, right? It's not necessarily the dialectic. We have to find the third point, right? We have to, bring the tension together in order to create the new thing within ourselves. And the stabilization or the discipline of our expression, represented by the sun, or our brilliance, or our, authenticity, how we express ourselves in the world, if we can, while the inner integration is happening, it's in the discipline of the training of life, basically, that will allow us to have this process or experience within ourselves without really necessarily making a huge mess of everything else in our life, right? That we can have these experiences internally, and then we can channel them through almost in some way to an expression that has to do with really disciplining that, right? It's not enough to just come into the interior or creative integration within ourselves. We have to give it an outlet, and that outlet could be a representation of some significant training and discipline on our part. So I don't know what that looks like for any of y'all, but again, my dreams, I had good sleep, but it was a very, very charged environment. So at this point, we're coming into the exact conjunction now with Mercury and Pluto, which we see right here, 27 degrees, 17 minutes here in Capricorn. This is, again, this morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we've already talked a lot about this because this is the degree of the natal Pluto of the United States, the default setting of the soul, to transform. And it's the area often that we make some of the biggest contributions in our particular life, because of the soul has already mastered this. The power of transformation is already coming through the natal Pluto position. So everybody, in terms of evolutionary astrology, you want to look at Pluto's opposite, which is going to be where this mystic rectangle happens, right? Because it's going to be the moon in Cancer. So we also know that this is a really important evolutionary trajectory or point for the United States as an entity, right? And that does impact all of us to transform by having the dome pretty much crumble all around us, and it reinforces where our true stability is. It's like pruning a tree, right? Or even like I talked about, I think I talked about this the other day. This is incredible how I had to cut back an entire plant that I had inherited from my uncle after he died, because it had been overrun with, I think, aphids. And like I was trying to treat it with neem oil and like the least toxic type of things possible. And eventually I was just like, every time I cut things back, it was clear that they were going to keep coming back and coming back. So I just cut it all the way down to the soil and kept my fingers crossed that the root system was going to be robust enough to sprout new sprouts. And I really wasn't sure, but as soon as the light started really right around Imbolc, right around it, the new moon in Imbolc, right around that time, there was a little sprout that came up, right? So you might cut all of that away, right? All of the fruits of the labor of the plant and everything that it has grown, which is Capricorn, or like even the entire ecosystem or the forest. You might have to it might have to get cut back. It's going to burn away. Mars and Venus are hovering around that position that was in the last new moon about letting it burn. So now it's becoming even more palpable with Venus and Mars, representing the expression of the masculine and the magnetism of the feminine itself, right? These are very palpable, personalized planets. They allow us to embody these experiences in actual action and magnetism. I often feel Venus transits, as I've talked about before, in my actual body, like in some sort of physical manifestation. So, and I bet you a lot of people have that if you start tracking it. And there are many astrologers, including two that I've done their summits that are very, their work is centered around the transits of Venus and the motion of Venus and the 5-pointed, star, the 19-month cycle of Venus, because it's so directly connected to us, and to symbolically to the body and embodiment. Anyway, so it's the root system. And so when we have this mystic rectangle, and we're going to see it at this same position of 27 to 28 degrees of Capricorn, with the nodes at the Pleiades, as you can see them right here. Again, this ability to let go of that which is naturally meant to be released at this part of the cycle, because it sets up the stage for a new one. And we're going to, at the full moon last year, we got, some sort of indication. I'll tell you what I got. I got a dream. Oh my God, I don't think I've told you guys about this. Maybe I did. I had a dream at that full moon. I was standing at the window, my front window in my actual house. Now, in dream interpretation, they'll tell you that the house, represents you or your soul or whatever. But I was literally standing in my current house. It wasn't, and there was nothing about it that was out of, that was distorted, or that it was a different image imposed. It was me standing at my front window, and it was very real. And I was watching out my front window as this UPS truck pulled up into my front yard, which is impossible. You have to cross the creek in order to do that, and there's only a tiny footbridge that I live in this naturally protected sanctuary. So as I'm standing at my front window going, well, what the fuck, dude? Like, how does that happen? And I remember saying that in my dream, and I was standing at the front window. I was definitely standing there and going, this is impossible. Like, there's no truck that's pulling into my front yard because of the way my property is set up. That should have been my cue to go into lucid dreaming, but it didn't. And what happened was the UPS truck pulls up to the front of my house. A guy gets out, and he's got this huge grappling hook, or he's like a tow truck, but it's definitely a brown delivery box truck. And he's hooking it up to my house. And I'm like, well, what is going on? And then I woke up, and I'm like, wow, what is that? So I have some ideas. It seems there's a couple ways that you could interpret that. You can interpret that completely esoterically, depending on where Cancer is in my house and what else is around that particular lunar position, right? There could be that. There could be a prophetic type of, hey, you're going to literally have your sense of home and security be moved very quickly, delivered somewhere else. Who knows, right? I'm waiting to see what happens. But the thing is, there's not going to be the sun there to illuminate that aspect of our subconscious anymore with this next mystic rectangle on Valentine's from Sunday into Monday, right? It's just going to be Pluto now. So it's going to be more subtle, but also I don't think it'll be just as powerful, but it won't be as obvious or illuminated at this point. It's going to be so much in the feels as well, so much in the feels that it may be very difficult. So remember last month at that full moon, and if you track your dreams, if you remember what was going on that day, I would recommend looking at the full moon and seeing what came up for you, because it's going to give you a good indication, I think, of how this weekend might, find its resolution, I suppose. So where are we at here? So the moon is still in Gemini. We're still talking about today, the 11th, Mercury and Pluto, right? That's the point of the mystic rectangle. So those two coming together allows for a deep penetrating analysis of what that dome is, right? The dome, the aviary, the large structure that allows for the free flow of spiritual ideas within it. But there's definitively a structure, right? Just like the dome in the Truman Show, right? He had an entire life from beginning to the point where he hit the end of the dome. It's pretty clear that the dome is up for demolition with Pluto, and has been for, especially since, this was a country, the United States became a country with the Declaration of Independence. So it was already slated for this time. There's no getting around this. Nothing can stop what is coming, right? So take advantage of this moment, even if it's uncomfortable because this, Mercury will be in the same basic position of conjunction with Pluto all day. So allow for the deep penetrating analysis, the powerful opportunities that can come with Mercury meeting Pluto like this, about the social order, about the institution that make up our security and our fortress of reality, about the dome, right? And its demolition, because with all demolition is the opportunity for something new to be created. And that's what you don't get with a binary false matrix, right? You can only harness the energy of the tension between the two dialectic positions. You can't create unless you have the spark there in the middle, right? That's what transmutation is creating. It's a chemical reaction based on heat as a catalyst, and it allows for a reforming of this, at the atomic level, basically, into something new. And that's something that the controllers lack. They can't create. They can't do it except for artistic, right? We can create artistically in all kinds of mediums, right? And we create through our sexual connection. We're able to create actual life forms, but. Man, The Matrix told us that movie, it was a terrible movie. Okay, it was a bad movie, but there were some really important nuggets, and one of them was how that's exactly what they do, is that they keep the tension at such a level that they siphon the energy from the tension of the two dialectic positions. And in the case of The Matrix, it was with Trinity and Neo. Okay, so it's just something to consider. So I mean, this is a lot to, we've all been considering this for a long time. And I think, and these ideas and concepts are evolving, and we're evolving and changing. And I can tell, and we all can tell, that it's reaching some sort of head right now. Okay. So as we go through the rest of the weekend, I mean, I think things will get much more sensitive and deep when the moon gets into Cancer, but it's going to be a moment of just like, okay. Because right now, this whole moon and Gemini thing has just been really very unsettling. And let's go into the 12th. So the 12th is Saturday. The moon has moved into Cancer at this point, and we also see that right before Mercury comes into this next degree of Capricorn, it's also going to be in a trine with Rahu, or the North Node, and that means it's in a sextile to the South Node. There we go. So, and it's with the mystic rectangle that we're going to see coming from Sunday, the Super Bowl, into Monday, that we're going to also see the same basic trine. So if you remember, this is the point of the November lunar eclipse. It is roughly the 27 to 28 degree Taurus mark, the crone phase, right? The crone phase that's welcomed, and that a mature and wise approach to the next cycle is brought forward, and it's part of the natural process. And having the North Node here right now, having the nodal axis at this point, is bringing this, it's like a time fold, right, back over to that point. But this has much more to do with our souls, the pull on our soul in a direction that's allowing us to learn. We don't, there's a lot of people that want to save what's here, and there's no saving it, because it's been slated for demolition since the moment it was born, just like all other life. Does that mean that the spirit dies? No. And I think this is the lesson we're really meant to learn, which is kind of like what the Christians have been saying this whole time, for the most part, right? I mean, that's kind of down in terms of Jesus' ministry. That was a big part of it, is, you don't give yourself to the flesh, you give yourself to the spirit, and then you live forever, right? So this is the idea that a soul exists, and that the soul can maintain its consciousness and make free choice. I mean, that's the difference. We're trapped otherwise. And we keep coming back in and being a battery for whoever thinks they're in charge here, which they're not. They're not the minute we all wake up. And that's why there's such a rush to do something about the moving into the age of Aquarius, because it's like, the humans figure it out, right? The earthlings really figure it out. So We're in the moon in Cancer as of Saturday, and we have Mercury who is in this trine right here, right? And again, the aviary, the large aviary, that allows for full spiritual connection, right? That you can be open to an infinite number of spiritual voices. Just like in an aviary, there is an entire, it's like a biodome. And the trine to this position of Taurus is very, very interesting, because this does speak to the natural process of the threefold maid, mother, crone. And like I said, coming into the crone phase. So a very stabilizing mental position as we are drawn forward in this direction in order for our souls to evolve. And so I just feel like once we can get into tomorrow, I feel like there will be a lot of stabilization, at least to some extent. It's not going to last long, right? Once we get to the full moon on the 16th, that's going to be something else. So, and we've talked about that. There'll be more forecasts to come for your sign about that position. So what are some of the big themes here? Well, one of them is that the moon is going to be in a square to Chiron, so and at the very same time is going to trine Jupiter. So we have a water trine with Jupiter in Pisces, and we also have which is coming into another Lyran starseed marking. If you have 10 degrees Pisces in your chart, provided you have the other required positions for starseed stuff, this is a Lyran starseed marking, Jupiter 10 degrees of Pisces. So we're getting into some very powerful territory over here with Jupiter and Neptune, like having an impact on the larger collective as a whole. So the moon in Cancer, right? This is a moment where we're like a raw diamond, and emotionally, right? You may find yourself over the weekend just being like, enough, like I can't do this anymore, or I am feeling so sure. And to remember that it's all part of the process of mastering your true spiritual vision, to be in alignment with sheer mastery of the mental spiritual realms. And part of that is being able to transcend and not even see what's going on. That's going to be very difficult when we feel like we're being, ground down with some sort of like tool, and we can hear, it's like going to the dentist and, getting a filling or something. You can hear or any kind of, work where you can hear the drill and you can feel the pressure and you're like, oh my God. Maybe there will be some anesthetization, and perhaps Jupiter in Pisces is going to allow for that. But I would say that it's more like high on life type of thing that's going to help in this moment emotionally. Now, the square to Chiron is where the challenge is, right? The challenge is to stay firmly planted in ourselves, right? It's totally fine to just be like, I'm all up in the clouds right now. That's like escapism right there, which is fine. I mean, you can see that emotionally it stabilizes us, but when it comes into our actual potential as subjective beings and how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, this is going to be a lot different, that square. And this is where the learning comes from. This is where the challenge and the confrontation allows us to evolve, which is we can see this grinding, shaping, this emotional stress of shaping us into something brilliant is enough to bring out all of this stuff, all of these triggers. But if we are able to handle that challenge head on, we can see the wider, more abstract meaning of things that we really feel very close to us, very sensitive, right? That's the thing about the moon in Cancer. It's going to be very sensitive, and you could find that you'd be triggered in your own identity a lot, but this is the space you want to lean into. You can find stabilization, or you can find some sort of traction with here's the thing. Jupiter is the big picture, right? It is the whole thing. And so when you're above the clouds and looking at the big picture, you don't even see what's going on down there. So that's going to, again, that's one way to like find some emotional stability in this moment. But the growing is going to be when it triggers you right into who you are. And you're like, ugh. If you can see it outside of that and really work this Chiron angle, you could see these symbols, see these experiences that are, and these images that are very emotionally arousing, right? In all kinds of ways as a wider abstraction. So, I mean, you know, these are cardinal squares, dude. They meet each other going full speed in their own directions, okay? And then and Uranus is going to get involved right after this because there's going to be the sextile from the moon in Cancer to Uranus. And again, we're starting, you know, Uranus is still in its post-retrograde shadow. So we're going back to this place again where we're window shopping reality. It's glitching in and out, right? And it's getting even more annoying because it's moving direct now. It's not just the glitching in and out within ourselves. Now it's like literally glitching in front of us, or we are window shopping all of these potential sets of values here, okay? And things are latent. Things aren't quite formed yet. Things are not quite solidified yet. And that's because everything grows along its own timeline. So it's like a clock. You can't, you can wind it forward, but you can't do anything but follow the pathway of the mechanism, even if you do want to change the speed or where it's situated. And it's the same thing with us, right? You can't force yourself into growing any more or faster than what you are timed to do. And somebody, oh man, I think it was Tamara, at some point in a conversation that she and I were having on Telegram, was just she had mentioned something about being like a time released starseed. And I was like, yeah, I think a lot of us are like time released on purpose. And this is the perfect activation for that, to remind ourselves that, our latent worth is maybe in our aura. Maybe it's something that's not accessible to out there yet. Maybe it's something that we're just getting a glimpse of. But when we can at least feel into the latent value and worth of who we are, this is a great way to capitalize on the shifting, glitching landscape of what we can have, and realize that this is the pathway of the awakening. The psychological crisis and the constant movement of Uranus is the trickster energy that wakes us up. And so it's so disorienting and it's so overwhelming. Even for people who are Aquarius, because Uranus is their planetary ruler, it's still like, because it's in Taurus, right? You're talking about the nuts and bolts of reality here. So we can see the latent worth in even that process and activate it, right? This is an investment that we can make in ourselves and how we feel. So I feel like, by Saturday, and you can see here, this is where Pluto's starting to come into the trine with the North Node as well. So the last thing that I want to bring up for Saturday is, this is where some big starseed activations are going to happen, because you're going to see here that the moon comes into conjunction with Sirius and then immediately is in an opposition to Mars and then to Venus in Capricorn. So these two are in conjunction to Vega, right? And the moon is in conjunction with Sirius. They are in a natural opposition to each other, right? Now that's an interesting story in and of itself. The Lyrans, they are ancient. I think that they've probably seeded a lot of the humanoids in the galaxy. And so, interesting that there's a natural opposition to them and the Syrians. And fixed star Sirius. That's something that I could probably spend an entire special report on. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to make available to subscribers. Get into these stories a lot deeper and really provoke some new thought around what we understand as being a starseed, right? Instead of just having people tell us what it is what it is, right? We figure it out for ourselves because we're living it every single moment. So you can see here, this is like midnight. So by the end of the day, you're going to see this opposition. And again, in terms of, you go from decision at the first half of Cancer, right? And then when you come into the second half of Cancer, you start consolidating the power. You start tightening the lattice work. You start, the root system starts to grow down. It starts to, get bulkier so it can stabilize the plant in the soil, right? You make a decision. The plant makes a decision by growing a root system into the soil. And once that happens, then the plant gives a lot of energy to strengthening the root system at that time. And then it's when and vegetative growth is happening a lot during this time, but it's the consolidation of power. What I see here is we are so hyper focused right now, and it's so hard to combat because it's all situated over here. We're very, and with Venus and Mars, it's very personal, right? It's how we feel. It's what's embodied. It's how we release our energy. And then Mercury, how our mind is working. And so that is a mediator of a lot of our experiences. And then just Pluto, right? Pluto has the final word, right? Pluto, I would argue Eris has the final word because the dwarf planet Eris is even further out past Pluto, and chaos really does have the final word. But that's a different story too. There's a lot of focus on the larger system as a whole, what it feels like, what we're doing towards it or about it, right? Mars and Capricorn, what we're thinking about it, our problem solving around these issues, right? It's all there. And you can see that in a lot of different ways, right? What's happening in Canada is a big part of it. The healthcare system as a whole, and, the political structure, the election in the United States, right? The political issues all around the world in different countries, right? The economy of it in and of itself, and the shifting to different modalities of the economy, right? Do we use cash? Are we going to have a digital currency? Who's going to back it? Right? Capricorn. So all and so much of what we're embodying has to do with the structures as a whole, right? And then you have the moon in Cancer all by itself over here in conjunction with Sirius. It's like, yeah, but it starts from within all of us individually and how we feel and the energy that we hold within us and our own stabilization. And so take the moment here to really find the fulcrum, because we can't not be involved in what's happening at a social level, right? At an economic level, at an institutional level. We can't. I mean, why would we? But it's also very pulled into a sense of responsibility and a sense of group integration and everybody on the same page and really attempting to do something and build something. Find the fulcrum, right? You don't want to get so caught up in just how you feel and your own emotional security that you forget or just ignore the really obvious energy up here at a social level. So find the balance, right? I mean, all of this is going to do what it's going to do. We can't forget that we individually and how we feel is the stabilizing force. And I'm telling you, this mystic Pleiadian rectangle is a big part of this too. It's gonna come back around by the end of Sunday into Monday, Valentine's Day, and then we're gonna see the mystic rectangle. Those are two oppositions surrounded by a rectangle. All of these opportunities to activate and to find stabilization in itself, and this is all experiential, right? It's Scorpio, Taurus, Capricorn, and Cancer, right? All the feminine, earth, and water signs. This is in the feels, emotionally and physically. So, I mean, the more that we keep trying to utilize our mind exclusively for these experiences, I feel like it's just more agitating. Now, when Mercury comes into Aquarius, it's going to be a different story, and that's going to be for the astrology looking towards the full moon. And even, actually, I would say on Monday, scratch that. Monday, the 14th, Valentine's Day, you're going to see Mercury's in the last degree of Capricorn. It's going to move into Aquarius. Now, there's one, let's look at this. Let's look at this, shall we? We're going to look at the mystic rectangle that's going to be happening on the 13th. And then also want to show you, there we go. Okay. This is a weird website. And you also see the moon is in a trine to Neptune. This again kind of goes back to the Truman Show aspect. Get on the boat, you know what I mean? Waiting for your ship to come in, being open to your ship coming in, awaiting your sailboat, so to speak. Emotionally, you got to keep yourself open in order to receive, you know, the law from the top of the mountain and apply it to your everyday life. You have to actually create a space within yourself emotionally and otherwise, feeling wise. And you have to feel secure enough to be able to wait patiently for what's coming and create the space. We've talked about this before, about creating a sacred space. How you expect things to materialize and manifest for yourself if you don't even have a space. There's no womb for anything to grow, then nothing's going to grow, right? There's no, if there's no root system, the plant is not going to thrive. And so we have to put the energy into that as well. And that's going to be, again, a stabilizing. And if you see here, this actually is kind of a grand water trine, but it's with the south node, which is not quite, I mean, it's still within 10 degrees, but it's pretty wide in terms of orb, right? An orb is just how many degrees are between the two or more bodies, right? So a 3-degree orb would be like it's within 3 degrees of each other, of whatever. So, but these are pretty strong. Jupiter sextile Uranus. You see the mystic rectangle now here with Pluto, with the Pleiadian nodes, and the moon which will be at 28 degrees. 28 degrees of Cancer, right? So let's look at that. There we go. So I don't need to belabor this anymore. I've talked about it a lot already. I just want to show you what it looks like. And so you see that there is meant to be an opposition between the two nodes because there always is. And so outside of it, all of these are Pleiadian markings, every single one. Capricorn, Taurus, these are galactic markings, and then you have Capricorn, Cancer, and Taurus. This is all Pleiadian, right? It's the Pleiadian nature that is providing all of the opportunities to resolve or to harness or even encapsulate in some way the potential energy of two oppositions meeting in the middle, right? It's a mystic rectangle, but it also it's a cross in the middle, right? But instead of the security and stability of the grand cross that we see on the full moon, right, which is a grand square with the two oppositions in the middle, the rectangle is it stretches it out a little bit, and it gives all of these opportunities to harmonize and to activate and invest oneself as potential solutions to problems. That's what I'm trying to say. So again, the Pleiadian nature, I'll link to the Pleiadian revival in this video so you can listen to it if you haven't already. I mean, this is a big part of it. And this is about, again, aligning with our soul's trajectory when it comes to the natural closing of a cycle that allows for a new one. We are going to address our own emotional security and our return to nature in this moment, our own nature, return in as Pluto returns back to its original point for the United States chart, showing that our real power of transformation at a social and political level is actually encoded in our very existence as a nation, and to lose the dome, as destructive as it will be to the psyche of men to be so, it also will be our freedom of transformation. Right? And I personally don't think we're trapped on this planet as much as we are quarantined for our own good. But that has changed. That can change. And I see it more as a blessing that we have the opportunity to be souls in Earth School as opposed to anything else. Now, but if you watch the Truman Show, you are under the impression that we are all trapped here. And that's a very Luciferian, actually, perspective, which is not surprising coming out of Hollywood. So that's for you to figure out. My point here is that regardless of how you feel about the dome, it's still slated for demolition from the moment it was created. And so as long as we accept that, we see plenty of opportunity to align with our natural soul's progression and our own internal stability as feeling-based humans. It's enough that the earth holds us, right? And the divine feminine that the moon in Cancer represents, is also, we have to find our own inner stability as well. So, and this is, Valentine's Day. We have the Super Bowl on the 13th. I mean, that opposition with the moon at Sirius and Venus and Mars as well. I mean, you're looking at pretty close to, I'm sure, it's the same day that the Super Bowl is happening. And so there's a lot surrounding this time frame. There's just a lot. And then this one here, Jupiter and Uranus, we'll talk about that next week because that's not going to be exact until it looks like, let's see here. It's going to be exact in terms of a sextile later in the week, maybe right after the full moon. So that's something that we'll talk about later, but you can already see that it's starting to get close. And this is a narrow path, right? This is a narrow path. But if we walk that narrow path, like spiritually and in a cosmic way, again, it's going to help us, walk through the Stargate at the right time as it's glitching. You know what I mean? It's just like, here, you can have this, you can have this. It's like window shopping reality now. And, it definitely feels like that, right? I'm just, like, what's true? Where do I put my focus? And there's a lot of that's been crafted in order to keep us there. But you also see how the cosmos and the cycles of time that are related to this astrology are also very much, framing these fixed points in time in terms of what they represent. And so there's a lot to learn here. All right, guys, I think that is plenty of information for the weekend. I'm going to pop over to the chat. I want to see what's going on over here. Let's see, we're talking about Scully, right? The one I'm looking at is connected to Chiron, the wounded healer, probably pretty serious about healing, I'd say. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I hear Syrians are better house trained. Wow, another full moon already. Well, I've certainly had some strange dreams lately. And wow, that's along the same lines of what I've been feeling, thinking, and dreamt last night. Big change, maybe letting go of past, present living quarters to move forward into new beginnings. Not necessarily because I'm ready to make that kind of change either. Unexpected sudden change. Light on change, by the way, as I'm reading your comments, I just want you to check your email because your reading is coming, and there's a reason why we're having this overlap of those types of experience. And in fact, that really what you're sharing right now, I'm so grateful that you're willing to share it, because this is, when I record your reading, which I plan on doing today, either today or next week, there's very particular that are coming up around this. So not necessarily because I'm ready to make that kind of change either. Unexpected, sudden, big change, right? That's definitely what it feels like. And Emily says, I had a dream last night that was very healing. I rewrote a story I've been telling myself right in the middle of the story. It allowed the other party to heal. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. That's what it's all about right there. Rewriting the story. That's the benefit of being able to transcend space-time, is the narrative, right? This is why they use it as a weapon, by the way, because of how absolutely powerful it is for transmutation. I mean, the narrative exists in the ninth house. The ninth house is the Sagittarian house, right? This is where the narrative is, and the narrative is the understanding. And when we change the data and we change our analysis, then we change the understanding. That is, I mean, I couldn't have put it any better in terms of rewriting the story and the story that you've been telling yourself. And when you do that, like, it changes the dynamic of everything. That is really cool. I really appreciate you sharing that. So Light on Change, check your email because I just wanted you to know, I'm a little behind on the readings because of being sick, but I also am very motivated to get it to you soon because of the timing, and there is a really specific overlap there between us that I'm going to, that I had planned on bringing up, and the fact that you are having the same basic, energetic reads on things is very interesting to me. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for now. So first I want to show, just in case anybody hasn't seen it, and if you have, then thank you for just humoring all of us, is my Pleiadian Revival offerings. So I'll link the video in the description box below if you haven't listened to it or if you want to refresh yourself. But these starseed readings are at a discount. I don't often offer the 30-minute reading at all, but I feel the need to expedite this process. And then the 30-minute Reiki add-ons for $22. So this is good up until the full moon. And normally the 60-minute starseed reading is $99. And usually I require that you have a full natal chart reading with me first, unless you're already kind of an astrologer or you've had your natal chart read by somebody else. So the fact that I'm offering these without that necessity is also telling in terms of like, you've got to get people up to speed right now. And there'll be more, waves of that in the future. But this is still available till the full moon on the 16th. And you can either book it through, send the request through the website that's listed there. And it's also linked in the description box below. You can email me directly and just put Pleiadian Revival. That's in the description box below. Of course, you can send me a message on Telegram. That's in the description box below. And you can really support this channel by going to Subscribestar, linked in the description box below, and subscribe for $3 a month, and that is going to give you access to exclusive content, not the least of which is going to be the Starseed meetups on a weekly basis. And that's something that I think we'll do maybe in a Zoom so people can have their voice heard. We can brainstorm, we can problem solve, we can learn from each other, anything to that effect, but it's only going to be available to subscribers. So if you are subscribed, I would recommend going back and making sure you're still subscribed, because I need 5 subscribers to activate the auto draft. And what a great goal, right? Something small but meaningful. And we'll just keep going from there. So I am going to be done for now. So guys, have a great weekend. I love you. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you need support, Telegram, we got a great chat function going over there. You can always email me if you have specific questions, or leave a comment if you have something in particular you want to bring up. I'm always responsive, and that's the benefit of having such a small community like this, is that we can actually be responsive to each other. So with that in mind, have a great weekend. Like I said, I will see you on Monday, and I'll see you on Telegram in the meantime. So love you guys. Peace out and have a blessed day. Bye.